Europe is running short on electricity. A perfect storm of surging demand and short supply means energy prices are rising across the sector, from natural gas to renewables. Governments are having to act to ensure a power shortage doesn't hurt their economic recoveries.
Can Europe keep the lights on? The continent is facing an energy crisis. Prices for many fuels have soared to new records in recent weeks. Businesses and households' power bills are rising too. Ireland is warned of possible blackouts. Energy prices have already been high on Europeans' minds after Brussels announced its Green Deal to transition away from fossil fuels in July.
Nigeria is at the center of a global energy shift the world did not expect, and the United Kingdom, once a dominant force in the export market, is suddenly feeling the pressure. For decades, the UK shaped global energy policy through North Sea oil, refined petroleum exports, and massive investment networks. But today, Nigeria is emerging as a powerful, fast-growing player in the global energy landscape, not through overnight miracles, but through steady growth, rising demand, expanding capacity, and strategic repositioning within Africa and the global market. What we're re-witnessing now is not just an economic shift, it is a geopolitical realignment. Around the world, nations are transitioning away from fossil fuels, investing in renewables, diversifying supply chains, and seeking energy partners outside traditional Western markets. Countries across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa are rewriting old alliances, recalibrating trade agreements, and looking for new sources of reliable, affordable energy. In this global restructuring, Nigeria has positioned itself as a major alternative supplier, and the world is taking notice. Nigeria has always been a significant oil producer, but over the past decade, its role has quietly expanded in sectors including LNG exports, natural gas partnerships, regional electricity distribution, and renewable energy projects. International investors, from Europe, China, India, and the Gulf, now see Nigeria as a long-term strategic partner, not just an oil well. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom has been dealing with declining North Sea output, rising domestic energy costs, and stricter environmental policies that limit future expansion. The UK hasn't collapsed. It remains a major global economy. But its role in energy exports is evolving, and in that evolution, Nigeria has found room to rise. Around 2010, the world expected Nigeria to continue exporting crude oil primarily to Europe and Asia. But between 2015 and 2024, Nigeria expanded its footprint in natural gas, LNG contracts, and electricity exports within West Africa. Massive projects such as the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, which aims to connect 11 West African nations, could reshape entire markets for decades. The Dangote refinery, one of the largest in the world, moves Nigeria closer to becoming a regional refining powerhouse. The national grid, though still challenged, is undergoing reforms and renewable expansion. These advancements arrived at a time when the UK faced energy shortages, supply volatility, and increased reliance on imported LNG during winter peaks. UK policymakers openly acknowledged the need to secure more reliable external suppliers in future decades, signaling a pivot away from the country's historical export dominance. This is the key moment where global perception shifted. While the UK strengthened internal transition policies, Nigeria strengthened its export strategy. Nigeria didn't replace the UK in scale, but it replaced it in growth momentum, regional influence, and market optimism. The international community watched as Nigeria deepened energy relationships with Morocco, Ghana, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and even countries as far as India and China. New partnerships formed with energy giants in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Nigeria became essential to Africa's future power architecture, and increasingly important to global supply chains. Analysts began to publish reports describing Nigeria as Africa's next major energy hub, a rising LNG force, and a future powerhouse in refined petroleum production. These weren't exaggerations, they were reflections of real policy shifts, major private investments, and significant infrastructure upgrades. At the same time, UK energy exports faced predictable declines in oil output, a costly transition to renewables, and competitive pressures from the United States, Norway, and Middle Eastern producers. The UK remains a strong energy innovator, especially in offshore wind, but its identity as an energy exporter is changing. And in the space created by that transition, Nigeria's rise looks even more dramatic. The phrase Nigeria replaced the UK became shorthand in global commentary, not for raw production numbers, but for the symbolic crossover of a rising African giant and a transitioning European power. The narrative captured headlines because it reflects a deeper truth. Africa's energy landscape is shifting, and Nigeria is at its center. Nigeria's influence is growing not because the UK is failing, but because global markets are expanding and diversifying. Investors today seek consistency, affordability, and growth. Nigeria provides all three in ways that surprise many observers. This growth is not without challenges. Nigeria still faces infrastructural struggles, pipeline security issues, bureaucratic delays, and power grid inefficiencies. But what has changed is the direction and the speed of its progress. What was once seen as stagnant has become dynamic. What was once viewed as vulnerable has become strategic. The European Union has increased energy dialogues with West African states. The United States is strengthening partnerships through the US-Africa strategy on energy resilience. China has funded billions in Nigerian gas and grid infrastructure. The Gulf states are investing heavily in gas pipelines, refining capacity, and renewable energy zones in Nigeria. For the first time, Nigeria's rise is not dependent solely on oil prices, but on diversified energy pillars, LNG, regional power export, solar expansion, and massive refining. Nigeria's ascent represents Africa's broader rise in the global energy hierarchy. Across the continent, new projects are emerging. Mozambique's LNG reserves, Tanzania's natural gas pipeline expansions, Namibia's offshore discoveries, Angola's refinery upgrades, Kenya's geothermal boom, Morocco's solar empire, and South Africa's wind energy expansion. Nigeria is not rising alone. It is rising with a continent that is becoming a competitive force in global energy markets. This is what fuels the narrative that Nigeria is replacing the UK. It symbolizes a moment where Africa's growth curve intersects with Europe's transition curve, one rising, the other shifting direction. Economists argue that this moment was inevitable. The world needs more energy, cleaner energy, and cheaper energy. Africa has the land, resources, sunlight, gas reserves, and youthful workforce to power the next global era. Nigeria's position as Africa's largest economy makes it a natural leader in this transition. As the global energy map redraws itself, Nigeria is no longer simply a participant, it is becoming a major player. International markets are watching. Investors are repositioning. European leaders are adjusting. And global analysts are paying attention to Nigeria in ways unseen since the early oil boom era. Nigeria didn't surpass the UK in total exports. It surpassed expectations, and that shift alone is enough to alter the global narrative. An African nation emerging as a formidable energy contender at the exact moment the global order is reshuffling. Nigeria's rise is not a headline, it is a trajectory. A slow climb that has turned into a rapid ascent. A regional player evolving into a global influencer. A country re-entering the world stage with strategy rather than surprise. Whether the world is ready for it or not, Nigeria is becoming a defining force in the new global energy landscape. And that rise will shape political alliances, global investment, and energy security discussions for decades to come.